Now let us welcome our Deputy Director, Associate Prof. Ali, to give us an opening address.
Recording in progress.
Thanks again. Hello and good afternoon everyone. It's good to see everyone over here physically for our iHealthtech webinar series. We haven't had one physical webinar for over 2 years since the pandemic hit us. So welcome everyone, and a big welcome to all our participants online as well. My name is Ali. I am the Deputy Director at iHealthtech. And just for people who are joining us for the first time, a quick introduction on iHealthtech. iHealthtech is a collaboration between the College of Design and Engineering, the School of Medicine, as well as the hospital, aim to develop an ecosystem where clinicians, scientists, and engineers can connect and collaborate with each other to incubate ideas and realize healthtech innovations all the way from bench to bedside and to market to finally making an impact. So, as most of you may or may not know, today is World Mental Health Day, and that's the reason why we have this seminar organized today. And I thought the mental health is an appropriate webinar to have on this day. To align with the university's program, the safety committee at iHealthtech decided that awareness of mental health among our lab staff, especially postgraduate researchers, should be a key safety and health program for 2020 to ensure both their psychological well-being as well as their physical safety when they're working long hours in the lab. During the planning, what I did learn was that studies into the mental health and well-being of postgraduate researchers reports very high rates of stress, mental ill health, and depression. For example, a recent report from the US revealed that 3 in 4 doctoral students experience elevated academic stress, while 1 in 2 may also suffer from depression. Similar numbers have been reported from other international studies as well, and Professor Roger Ho might talk a little bit more about that during his presentation. While we do expect our postgraduate researchers to work hard, we want to ensure that we get plenty of rest and sleep. Sleep-related issues like insomnia and nightmares are actually precursors for depression and anxiety in this population specifically. Not recommending any PIs to install beds in your laboratories, but we still need to ensure that the students and our researchers are not working very long hours. At NUS, there's also an open dialogue on mental health and resources available to students and staff to get help when required. We strongly believe at iHealthtech that the good mental health will allow our researchers to realize their abilities to work safely and productively and make impactful contributions to science and the communities at large. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, who is an expert and can share more on this topic. It gives me great honor and pleasure to welcome my colleague and our speaker today, Professor Roger Ho from NUH. Roger is a professor at the Department of Psychological Medicine in the Yong School of Medicine, as well as a senior consultant in the Department of Psychiatry at the National University Hospital. He's also a principal investigator at iHealthtech and the director of the Functional Near-Infrared Spectroscopy, or FNIRS lab at iHealthtech. The title of today's talk is Understanding Mental Health for Postgraduate Students and Beyond. A quick introduction on Roger. His clinical and research interests include applying FNIRS in diagnosing all other psychiatric conditions, psychiatric disorders including ADHD, borderline personality disorders, major depressive disorders, and dementia. He has translated his research findings into clinical implementation at NUS iHealthtech, helping hundreds of patients. And today we will also have a quick demonstration of this technology with one of the volunteers from the audience. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he conducted global mental health research to study the psychological impact of the pandemic in different countries. A few of his papers on this impact of COVID on the general population has been cited more than 20,000 times in under 2 years. And this is a number that most academics don't even reach in a lifetime, right? So kudos, and it just validates the huge impact these studies have had globally. He has published over 500 medical and psychiatric journal articles and has co-authored 6 books. His publications has gained 40,000 citations and has a H index of nearly 80, and in 2021, Clarivate Analytics identified him as one of the world's most highly cited and influential researchers. So before I hand over to Professor Roger Ho, we have a quick 5-minute video, and then we'll get on with the talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Ali. Now let's watch a video on depression is okay, better together.
This shouldn't be so bad.
Mom, I can't need help.
What's the purpose of life?
Hi, James. How are you feeling today? I'm better now. Great. Do you have any scary feelings going on? That's the rest. Now I try to talk to my friends more. Friends are going to Facebook.
Now I'm glad to welcome Prof. Roger Ho to present on understanding mental health for postgraduate students and beyond. Prof. Ho, thank you.
So it's my honor to speak at iHealthtech. I think we may meet each other either here or E7. So I am Professor Roger. Besides being a professor of psychiatry, I'm also a senior consultant psychiatrist at NUH. So today I would like to talk about the understanding mental health for postgraduate students and beyond. When we planned for this talk, this was a challenge because the people here definitely have very high IQ. So if I give a simple talk, which you can find on YouTube, then you won't find it interesting. So I'm going to think how to make it interesting and engage our PhD student and junior researcher here and also online. So we actually thought of some creative way, and also we want to demonstrate some biological evidence of depressions, because I think we are all researchers here and we have laboratory evidence to show that depression in fact is a biological or medical condition, it's not just a psychological condition. Now, the first topic is how does depression affect our body and the source of stress among the postgraduate students. Now, before I proceed, many people get confused between my role and a psychologist. I'm a psychiatrist, so psychiatrist is a medical doctor, and our role is actually diagnose psychiatric condition and offer biological treatment. Usually it's pharmacological medication, but we do have some like magnetic stimulation, electrical stimulations, but we mainly offer medication. Our colleagues who are psychologists, they are not medical doctors by training, but they usually offer the counseling and talking therapy. Now, depression is common. Major depressive disorder, i.e. is so severe that the person cannot function. It's called around 5% in the world. But there are many people who have depressive symptoms. So they can still function, but they feel sad, they cannot sleep. It's around 10 to 15% in the world. And it's a leading cause of disability worldwide. It's not less than heart diseases, and it's not less than diabetes. It's a chronic disease. In my clinic, I have seen some patients for more than 10 years because once they stop the medicine, they become depressed again. And it affects their working ability, so it's a global disease burden and reduce the productivity of the society. The estimated lifetime prevalence of major depressive disorder in Singapore is around 6.3%. Now, among academics, it can be higher because of the demand, whether it's PhD requirement, promotion and tenure, but many of us may not come out and seek help because they worry about stigma. People will think that it's weak. Or I always hear people saying that, oh, it's all in your mind. If you actually change your thinking, change your perspective, things will be okay. But it's not as simple as that. So the prevalence of MDD can be even higher in our field. Now, these are the symptoms of depressions, signs and symptoms of depression. And as you can see, we have the symptom of depression, including feeling depressed, loss of interest, low self-esteem, and thinking about death. These are the psychological symptoms. The biological symptom will be the appetite, the sleep, the energy level, and they feel they are slow. And also the other thing is sometimes they cannot focus. But these are the classical signs and symptoms of depression. Now, as most of the audience here are researchers, then we look at the biological impact of depression. By the way, there are a few empty seats here, so you can see, no need to stand. There's still quite a few empty seats in front. Okay. Now, of course, some of the researchers have been doing cytokines research. We have actually pro-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin-6, tumor necrotic factor, and interleukin-2. Now, in our research, one of my studies actually is to compare people with depression and people without depression in the world using meta-analysis. This paper was published in 2012, 10 years ago, and at that time we gathered 1,627 participants worldwide, and 901 have depression, 726 have their healthy control. One of the pro-inflammatory marker we found in people with major depressive disorder versus healthy control was raised interleukin-6. Now for human, you can only check the interleukin-6 in the blood. We cannot check the interleukin-6 in our brain because we cannot actually put a needle in our brain and measure interleukin-6. Now, interleukin-6, the raised interleukin-6 actually make depression. In fact, it's a medical illness. It's not just all in their mind, but it also affects the body. Now this diagram shows what is the potential damage on our body with interleukin-6 increase. For those who do medical research, they're quite familiar with, for example, they will form the amyloid. And if you form amyloid, for example, in the brain, it will cause dementia. It also affects the heart. That's why depression is actually linked to cardiovascular problem. It will also make the phagocytosis, the platelet, act together, cause inflammation. It's called osteoporosis, bone fracture. If it affects the lung, it will cause fibrosis. So you can see the interleukin 6 is called damage in different part of the body. So depression is not just in the mind. Actually, I think we all feel depressed at a certain point in our life. Let's say we get a bad news. Then, besides we feel low, we actually feel cold, we feel weak, we feel muscle pain, we feel actually poor appetite. These are actually due to it could be due to the inflammatory response caused by depressions. Of course, one of the complications that is most well known is the relationship between depression and cardiovascular disease. So people who are depressed, they're more likely to develop heart attack. Vice versa, people have heart attack or cardiovascular disease also develop depressions. Similarly for stroke, people with stroke, they also more likely to develop depressions. Now, as we cannot measure interleukin 6 in our blood, then you will ask what happened in our animal study. Can we actually sacrifice an animal, look at the interleukin 6 in animals who are depressed? Now, there is a way to make animal depressed. One of my research actually, we actually use rat, not mice but the rat, and then we actually use what we call chronic mouse stress to cause depression in rat. So what happened is that the rats, what will happen to them during the experiment? We have different groups. We have the group that actually they live happily, they're the control group. But we also have rats that are actually stressed, the CUMS group, chronic unpredictable mouse stress. So we actually every day the stress doesn't know what stressor they face. For example, they may be deprived of food for one day. Next day they actually cannot sleep, we don't turn the lighting on. We wet the bedding, it's uncomfortable. So the rats are stressed. I think this model is very similar to human model of depression. I don't give toxin. There's some researchers give like lipopolysaccharide a toxin to cause so-called depression, but I think that is not the most similar experience to human. Human actually face stress. So the rats who face the chronic stress, they will have high interleukin 6 level in hippocampus in the brain, as you indicate the red color. I think the red color there. And we also found that in this group, there are group of rats that are stressed, and then we also expose them to high-fat diet. Now in human, when we are stressed, we have what we call comfort eating. So we will start to eat. We will eat a lot of chocolate, cookies, French fries. Of course, not good for our health. But again, those group who are stressed and also eat a lot, they also have raised interleukin 6. Now, so increase in interleukin 6 causing inflammations in the hippocampus, it will affect our memory. Because hippocampus is an important area in the brain that actually for memory. So this study also found that interleukin 6 is not just raised in our peripheral or in our blood, but it's also in our central nervous system when we are depressed and stressed. Okay, next slide. Okay, now from human in general, we talk about animal. Now let's move to the postgraduate student. So what are the stressors that relate to PhD students? Because I myself, I would say I'm a bit different because for us, it's a bit challenging for the medical doctor to do PhD because we really have no time to do coursework. So I can imagine how difficult it is. So I actually, because I graduated from Hong Kong, so actually we are allowed to do doctor of medicine. But doctor of medicine in Hong Kong is a postgraduate degree. It's not the MD in America. So we are actually doing a part-time PhD degree, but we do not require to do coursework. And we are allowed to do the project in Singapore and submit the thesis in Hong Kong. But I also supervise PhD students. I think I've supervised more than 20 so far in my career. So some of the challenges we face, some of them are more focused on NUS, some of them are general. One of the challenges is that they chose the wrong course, wrong modules. Many of our PhD students are actually on scholarship. They have to maintain a certain GPA to continue. So 10 years ago, I have a few PhD graduates, like animal study, just like those I demonstrate in my department. But for some reason, they signed up a course for chemotherapy. So it was taught by a cancer doctor, and the cancer doctor expected they remember all the single side effects of chemotherapy, and they found it's very painful, and also they affect the GPA. So choosing the wrong course and it affects the mental health. Now the other thing is difficulty to start a study and research. Now I understand that, especially I actually mainly doing clinical research. So it's even more difficult because I have cases like this. Is some people are very interested to study autism, for example, because they may have family members of autism, so they have a passion about autism. But then when they say they have come up with a very beautiful project on autism, but actually in my department, we do not have patients with autism. So we can't do anything. It's a wrong project in the wrong setting. Of course, this is very obvious, but sometimes it's when they go in, they thought that they could complete this project in that setting, but unfortunately, after 1 or 2 years, they found that they could not complete. Disagreement with the supervisor. Okay, we all have our strong view. It could be our PhD student, supervisor also. It's not uncommon, especially I actually more experienced in medicine. I know it may be different from engineering to medicine. We often have change of supervisor. It's often from basic science department to clinical because the basic science department have a high expectation. So after 6 months, they think, oh, this student, the lab skill is not good enough. Please ask for an internal transfer. So of course, it's called stress in PhD students. Now, I heard that there's some difference between medicine and engineering. Medicine have a higher failure rate for PQE. I heard engineering seems to be better. So it's also quite sad for students. I have PhD who actually, they feel very sad when they fail PQE and then redo again. Of course, we hope that we don't see people fail all defense. It's even a bigger disaster if they fail all defense. But fail PQE is more common in my faculty. Okay, a research project cannot generate significant results, and results are not publishable. Now, in medicine, I'm not sure what is this the same as engineering. Ali can update me. We do have a requirement nowadays for us, for medical school, if they want to get a PhD, the PhD candidate must be first offer for a paper published in peer-reviewed journal. Is the same for engineering? So, of course, that is stress. And I know some universities overseas, they even have a requirement that the PhD must publish in a journal as a first offer with impact factor more than 3. There are actually students in other overseas universities that are stuck with a PhD because they completed the project but they could not get their paper published. Okay, so that's what I mentioned. Some universities have this requirement and not able to complete PhD on time is stressful for those who are on scholarship. Those who are not on scholarship, they are okay to extend. But for those who are on scholarship, they found the tuition fee is quite high after the 4 years. So they actually have to compete within the time frame. Now, personal issue, long working hours. I also have long working hours, so sometimes I appear at iHealthtech at 11 p.m. I'm still seeing PhD students walking around. Same for weekend. We have very long working hours and we will be socially isolated. Your friend can go out, but we have to do the lab, we have to stay here. And many of our PhD are from other countries. So their family members are not here, they feel there's no support from their family members and they feel homesick, especially in the past 2 years, it's not so easy to travel, so people feel homesick, cannot visit their family members. Okay, personality of PhD or academic. One personality, there's no personality, one is actually we are quite perfectionistic. We are very rigid. We actually cannot delegate tasks to other people, we do everything to ourselves. Some of us may have a lower stress tolerance because we have been very successful in our life. We actually, like in the past, primary school, secondary school, all straight A, in university, bachelor degree, all straight A, high GPA. But when we first time come to PhD, we have the first failure. Okay, so this is the second point. Yeah, we can't handle failure because you are a straight A student all the time. That creativity, I have PhD students, unfortunately, the student have a downgrade to master. The reason is he did very well as an undergraduate. Straight A students get into PhD immediately. But unfortunately, sometimes they did well in the MCQ exam, doesn't mean they can be creative in research. In fact, sometimes people who are doing research, they may not do well in MCQ because they may argue, I don't think all the 5 are not the best answer. So, these are the academics. During the PhD, some people, they want the entitlement. I want a doctor call me doctor before my name. But they may not have the resilience to work hard. Okay, so next slide. Okay, for junior academic, let's say people got a PhD, now they move on academic. It could be a postdoc or assistant professor in a tenure track. Again, research is not going to anywhere. Now, things can be complicated when you become junior academic. One thing we see in the medical school, because we do human research, we do patient research. Let's say there are 600 patients in this register in this system, but But if we have 20 PI, which are only 30 patients per PI, it's actually, 30 patients you cannot publish anything. So you will see that there will be competitions, resources will not be evenly distributed, then it causes stress among the academics. Some people may not be able to find a postdoc position, or some people, vice versa, is they've been in a postdoc for many years but cannot find a academic post in the tenure track. Now, the other thing is when they become an academic staff, they will chase for academic outputs, how many papers per year, and sometimes the research field is very slow, not productive, it's very hard to do research. I think in our field, if the research depends on patients, and some of the patients are not motivated, it's very hard to progress. Our university is famous for FWCI. If you talk to other universities, what is FWCI? But then we'll explain. It's a field-weight citation index. So for NUS, published paper is not good enough. Your paper must be cited. Now this is more difficult. You cannot control how many people cite paper. Failure to get a research grant, for example, in medicine, it's very competitive, very hard to get research grants. And because the resources are limited, there will be competition, there will be jealousy, there will be rivalry, there will be a psychological imbalance. Okay, if you get into the tenure track, one of the stress is the tenure clock. Our university assistant professor is 6 years, and there's a midterm review. So it's stressful. Actually, midterm review starts at 3 years, they're already making recommendations. Personal issue, marital issues, we often found that one day you get married or you have a partner. If both partners are academic in different fields, you move to a university, can both of you find a job in that university or in the same city? This is always challenging. Some of you, maybe in the mid-30s, you have your children, it's very challenging to do research and your baby, writing a paper and your baby crying. I have gone through all this, yeah, so I know how difficult it is. Pride issues. Actually, we have a lot of pride. Our publication, our paper, I was invited to present a conference. I'm very proud. But some downside of being proud is what happened, things don't work out. We cannot accept it. I have been successful with this topic as a PhD student, but now things don't work out. I cannot take it. Financial problems. Unfortunately, we are not in the commercial industry. Academics are not the most well paid, but recently we have the inflations. Some of us may face financial problems. We may have family history of depression. We may have depression in the past. That all increase our risk. Now the other thing is alcohol. Academics do drink. And here, we have two sources of alcohol. Western alcohol, your white wine from France, and we also have our white wine from China, the Mao-Tai from China. Very high alcohol concentrations. Now, we drink a bit to get a bit high, we're a bit relaxed, a bit dissipated, how new research idea comes. But we drink too much. Alcohol to damage our brain, affect our memory. We also gain weight, it causes metabolic syndrome, a lot of glucose inside the alcohol. So it may be vicious cycle is actually, we may actually not getting well, we may get worse. Now the other thing is, Singapore has good control of drugs, but if you go to Western countries, of course marijuana will come. Rather we smoke a cannabis if your paper got rejected. And now marijuana, one thing is, if you smoke marijuana every day, marijuana is causing a motivation. This is worse for academic. We will lose our motivation. We very relaxed, lie in bed all day long, but we lost our motivation to do research. And marijuana is an appetite stimulant, so people gain weight. Of course, they deny. Sometimes they smoke marijuana in overseas. When they come back, they deny, but then they gain a lot of weight. Of course, they will bring the food in. I eat too much hamburger in overseas, but actually it's a marijuana. Okay, midlife crisis. Now, people who are 40s, sometimes our creativity drops when we get older. So research is about creativity, new idea. So people will have midlife crisis and loss of direction. Interpersonal problem, not uncommon that we were stressed and we go to displace our frustration. Sometimes we go home, we scold our family members. Sometimes we display anger to our junior colleagues. So that causes the adverse mental health environment. Okay, now so this is an academic, one of the academic enablers. So academics must be, as I say, must be more motivated. So if they smoke marijuana, they lost their motivation. They must be very engaged emotionally, cognitively they also engage, academic engagement, supposed to have good interpersonal skill, work with team member, research skill, and they have a sort of academic attitude and belief. But what happens if they're depressed? So they're depressed, of course they're unstable emotion, they cannot engage emotionally, they cannot concentrate. They lack of the drive and motivation, they become depressed. They don't have the right attitude, bias, and sometimes tunnel visions. They only see things in a very narrow way, they cannot see the whole pictures. They don't withdraw, then they actually don't have the logical thinking. And it affects the relationship. I think in the video, just now the man was depressed, when people asking him, he was very irritable. So it affects the relationship with other people. Now, okay, we want to understand how depression affects the brain, and then how does the brain of researcher and postgraduate may be different from other people. Now, here, when people are very interested in our efforts, what do we do? We see patients coming for assessment. Now, a proper procedure will have more than just the brain scan. We do have, of course, we have the consent, and we do the depression scale for depression. If they have different disorder, we do different scale. We also interview based on DSM-5, which is a diagnostic statistic manual from America. It's one of the standard to diagnose psychiatric condition. Then we do the brain scan, but we give a diagnostic report, but the result are the combination of all the aspects. We are not just saying the brain scan shows this, they are depression, because the psychiatric illness, sometimes they overlap in terms of findings, because our brain is complicated. The frontal lobe is doing many things. So but today, even for we need a volunteer for scan, we only do this part, so we cannot diagnose a person. So since 2016, I actually have been adopting this new technology. Because I'm a medical doctor, I'm different from some of your supervisors and colleagues. I can't invent things, but actually we try to utilize this imaging modality called functional near-infrared spectroscopy. Now, this is actually similar to functional MRI. The difference is that it cannot go deep in the brain, but it's much cheaper. Like today, later on we have volunteer to do the FNUS. Of course, it's free, but if we scan someone in MRI, it will be $700. So this infrared light using the wavelength 650 to 1000 nanometer, and to detect the oxyhemoglobin level change in the brain. This is the same as the functional MRI. When we do a cognitive task, it's supposed to increase the oxyhemoglobin level. But in psychiatry, based on the previous fMRI research, we found that psychiatric illness affect the oxyhemoglobin level going to the brain. So this task is an objective tool, because when we talk about depression, it's subjective. You talk to the doctor said you're depressed. We have an objective tool. Of course, it's also satisfy people who have a high demand, such as our academic. They want to see, can you prove I'm depressed? So this is one of the ways to prove objectively, and you cannot influence the result. Of course, one of the areas we're interested in is the frontal lobe. Now, this is a research done by Fabia Hussein, who actually graduated. She was a postdoc fellow in the pediatric department at this moment. So in her PhD, she actually recruit patients from my clinic with depressive disorder, and she recruit healthy control from her connections. And they do a cognitive task. Later on, one of the volunteers will also try this task. And we found that it's very obvious. The red line represents the depressed patients. The green line represents healthy control. So the oxyhemoglobin level in the frontal and the temporal lobe are much lower in the depressed patient compared to healthy controls. And these alone have a sensitivity and specificity of around 75% to differentiate MDD and healthy control. In my field, in psychiatry, very hard to get 99% because our conditions are heterogeneous. And there's no gold standard in diagnosis. If you talk about liver cancer, you have a gold standard because you can do biopsy and look at the cancer cell, but we can't. So this is one of the best, but of course in clinical it's more accurate because there's a clinical interview. This one is just the brain scan alone can separate depression and healthy control. And there are depressive disorder and other psychiatric illness that overlap. For example, there's a condition called borderline personality disorder. They're actually emotionally very unstable. And then you will ask, how do we differentiate borderline personality disorder and major depressive disorder? Because they all have no mood. But the brain scan, you can see the depressive disorder, the oxyhemoglobin level, the red line here, is much lower than the borderline. And that borderline is in between healthy control and major depressive disorder. And there's a channel in the right frontal cortex can actually further differentiate borderline and depression. So that's how we can even make the diagnosis more accurate. Now, I know you like AI. Currently, we have Li Jifei. He's still doing a PhD. This is one of his research finding. He actually used machine learning to classify MDD and healthy control based on the adverse results. So, as some of you may do machine learning, you know that it's a set they need to learn, and then they apply to another set they try to test. So actually, the correct detection rate is around 78%. So again, psychiatry, because not 100%, because there's not another factor. So if we can use this for AI to separate depression and healthy control. Now I mentioned that Fabiha was saying when she do her PhD, she start to be good healthy control. So she was sitting there a few years ago. She would ask some of the people here, maybe some of them are graduated, to be healthy control. Then, now, I will share with you my findings first before coming out. Now, this is my brain scan result. When I actually first applied this machine, I scanned my brain. And then I said, actually, I'm not that normal. I thought this my frontal lobe is very low, which is minus 20.8. I think Songki is the first time we see this. But my temporal is 565. So, it's a big contrast. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm the only abnormal one in the world, so this is, I just accept it. But then when Fabiha recruit the control, she said that, yeah, I discovered that many people from iHealthtech, they have very low frontal lobe function but high temporal lobe functions. So it sounds like me actually. But unfortunately, we can use that for healthy control because maybe they are not healthy or they're very stressed. So then I think, what is the reason why? Okay, assume I'm good enough to be academic. Why we have low frontal lobe or high temporal lobe? Now, we have to understand frontal lobe function and temporal lobe functions. Frontal lobe is a part of the brain. This is a very important part of the brain. We differentiate ourselves from other primates. We can plan, we can pay attention, we can prioritize, we can solve problems. We can control our emotions, we can control our impulses. This belongs to frontal lobe. So, but a low frontal lobe function for academic, for example, we are less restrictive. Sometimes we don't follow rules, we are more creative. We sometimes don't go by the book. And we act fast. Okay, one thing I think Prof. Ali mentioned, I did COVID research. And in fact, when China had an outbreak in COVID, I want to immediately connect my collaborator in China, please study anxiety depression now, because we have to be the first in the world to do it. So we do act very fast, and we are a bit impulsive, okay? Sometimes we may not have a plan. We do it. We actually just do it and see what happens. And sometimes it's a lot of fun, like adverse research, because it's free of charge. Okay, but we have an idea. I have an idea, for example, I want to scan the brain of medical student when they do MCQ exam. So we can just do it. Because you don't need to pay $700. You just try on a few students and see what happens. And sometimes we are multitask. Okay, good or bad things. Okay, we are less focused, but we are multitask. Maybe we write paper, we answer reviewer, we do lab, we do many things in one day. Novelty seeking. We like novel stuff. And sometimes we have academic temper. Some of your professors may be very angry, irritable, you may be scared, but it sounds like authority. We are aggressive, we are ambitious, we are very hungry for research. Okay, these are the good things. The downside of having a low frontal lobe functions, so it's not non-frontal lobe, it's low frontal lobe function, is when we flip the coin, we have a low frontal lobe function is we can be impulsive, we will do or say one thing that upset people. We may be prone to depressions. We have poor attention concentration, sometimes we get bored easily. Some of us may be poor planner, we are a bit disinhibited sometimes. Some people come across us, we may be too hungry for knowledge, we are a bit aggressive. Okay, so this is the frontal lobe. Temporal lobe. Okay, high temporal lobe, okay, temporal is for memory and language. So I think for people in the medical school, we have to memorize a lot of things. We were trained to improve our memory, so that's why we may have a high temporal lobe. Also academic writing, we may actually have a good language skill writing papers. Let's go back to how to treat depression. To treat depression really work. Now this is the treatment for depression. So my simple thing is lifestyle change and psychological interventions. So such as, for example, change your lifestyle, reduce the stress. I will talk about psychological intervention later on. There are few, but now I think because here at iHealthtech, people like technological. Of course, you can ask, can the intervention develop online? The answer is yes. It's called Internet CBT, ICBT. Now, the ICBT work well in those Western countries, but our local patients don't like it because there's a lot of reading. They don't like to read online. So the whole idea is they read a lot of stories and then they change their thinking. They do a diary. This is a challenge for our local patient also. They don't want to fill out the diary. The whole idea is they're supposed to challenge their negative thought through the internet CBT and change their life. Or they have a timetable. They have a timetable. They say, today I must do this, tomorrow I need to do that to reduce their motivations. If it doesn't work, we will consider pharmacotherapy, medications, or combination. Now this is more advanced. We have electrical convulsive therapy. We give electrical treatment to the brain. And the other thing is magnetic stimulation to the brain. Now these both are available in our hospital. Okay, CBT. I'm not a psychologist. Usually psychologists are the one who deliver this. As I say, there are two parts. The quality part is they actually ask them to write down a diary. A lot of negative thinking. For example, if I get rejected by this journal, it means I'm a failure. So the psychologist will analyze with the person and say, oh, maybe rejection is very common. Can we submit again? So they actually change their thinking. Behavior is actually try to be less withdrawn and be more engaged. NUS do offer psychotherapy in the counseling center. They offer X sessions. Because of the high demand, they only offer X sessions. But nowadays, CBT, which are the internet, which is not doing, the ICBT I mentioned, there's no people there, but many of the patients, they actually see a psychologist in other countries online. Because the American psychologists, they are just 12 hours different from us. So nighttime of Singapore is daytime in the United States. Some of our patients actually consult psychologists online. Okay, mindfulness. People talk about this. Mindfulness hot topic. Usually, the mindfulness definition is you focus on here and now. Sometimes we have a very busy mind. You will ask, oh, why the experience doesn't work? Why the people got rejected? What's the future? Focus on here and now. Regulate your breathing, movement, and sensations. I think there are lots of YouTube videos how to do mindfulness. So you can actually turn on and practice. Now, as we are researcher, you will ask, what's the evidence of mindfulness? We have done an evidence study. We find that people, when they practice mindfulness, there's activation in the left prefrontal cortex. Relaxation technique. Again, I'm sure there's not a good YouTube video with a comfortable voice to guide you how to relax, meditate, relax your muscles, slow breathing, etc. We did a research a few years ago using the after scan, another after scan. It's a portable one, and we asked the person to do relaxation exercise and control task. Control task, they do nothing, they just look at the cross. So we found that if they do control task, okay, so before the control task, they do the mathematics exercise, the activation, not much. After the control task, looking at the cross, even a bit deactivated. But if we ask them to relax, let's say deep breathing, relax the muscle, after the relaxation, when they do the same mathematical task, there's much more activation to the brain. Of course, more activation is good. We have more focus, more concentrate. Okay, the other thing is medications. Of course, medications have been given by psychiatrists or GPs. We do have different classes of antidepressant. The most commonly used is the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and you may have heard a very famous antidepressant called Prozac. It actually belongs to this class. Now, all of us are researchers here. We want to see the science behind the antidepressants. So there is a science. There is an increase in serotonin in the synapses in the brain after you take the SSRI. Increase in serotonin is important to improve our mood, reduce anxiety, and reduce suicidal thought if the person is suicidal. Now, I also test the antidepressant in animals. Continue the interleukin-6 story. We have just found that when we are depressed by the human and animals, there's an increase in interleukin-6. Then you ask, can the antidepressant bring down the interleukin-6? So in this animal study, we actually feed the rat with orally. I don't feed them, usually they give intraperitoneal, but I don't think this is the normal way of taking antidepressant. Humans take antidepressant orally. So I also want the rat to take the antidepressant orally. So we have vehicle, which is the placebo fluoxetine, and control group, they are not depressed, they are not exposed to stress. So as you see, the control group, they have very low, the green one, low interleukin-6 level. The red line will represent that the rat that are stressed and taking placebo. You can see that after 4 months of experience, the interleukin-6 level shoot up. And the rat to take the fluoxetine, the antidepressant, you can see the interleukin-6 level also maintain very low. Again, same thing for if we dissect the brain, and then we look at the cytokine level. In this case, we found another cytokine called interleukin-1 beta. We found that the rat take fluoxetine, the interleukin-1 beta level is significantly lower than those who take placebo, 233 versus a mean of 665. So antidepressants do work biologically. This is another antidepressant, it's the latest antidepressant called fertioxetine. They actually they have more action than fluoxetine. And one of the things we look at is the BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is very important because brain-derived neurotrophic factor is to help our neurons to grow. So depression is well known to have low BDNF level. If you compare, this is the rat actually taking placebo. There is not much neuron, the density is not that high. But on the other hand, the antidepressant, the density is as high as the control rat. And we found the latest antidepressant, they cause a significant increase in the BDNF level in the neurons. Okay, so the benefit of antidepressants is they improve the mood, reduce mood swing, we are less impulsive, less irritable, restore our sleep and appetite, increase our energy level and motivations, improve our attention concentration, and reduce suicidal thoughts. The first episode we recommend to take 6 months. But people who have chronic depression, for example, they have past history of depression, family history of depression, they got admitted or they attempt suicide, we ask them to continue longer. The most common side effect is nausea, but even common side effect is not 100%. Many patients don't have any side effect. We call common side effect actually is less than 10%. Some of the energetic antidepressants may cause anxiety, some sedative antidepressants may cause daytime drowsiness, some may cause sexual dysfunctions. But there are many antidepressants to choose in the market, we can actually avoid some of the side effects. Okay, then how about our postgraduate students? How do we improve our mental health? Some tips. So first of all, if you are in the year 1, careful selection of the modules. I think I always encourage my PhD students that if you're on scholarship, maybe the GPA is more important. And also don't choose course that's not so relevant for your study. Understand your potential supervisor, the background, the track record, the personality of the supervisor. Be very realistic about PhD. Now my view, okay, I don't represent all people's view. My view of PhD is an entrance ticket for a future career. It may be academic, it may be industrial, but some people say PhD is the gold standard, is the top degree, but they give them a lot of stress. And sometimes it may be unrealistic. And I think we must fulfill our graduation requirements. So again, we have to balance. You have a research topic, but it's hard to publish, especially in our faculty, they need to be a first author for a paper, so they must fulfill the publication requirements, so they may have to change the topic so that they can graduate. Practicality and science. Yes, sometimes we are too perfectionistic, we talk about science, but is it practical? For example, we want to recruit patients for my field. The first thing is, yes, your project is very scientific and very invasive also. You have to inject, let's say, some radioactive substance to elderly. Will the elderly participate? So if the elderly don't participate, even you have to grant very good science, the project is not going to work. If the project doesn't work, change early before the 3rd or 4th year PhD and time is running out. And share your difficulty with other PhD students, but don't compare. I have this, sadly, I have some PhD students, they could not graduate. I have one student, he was in faculty of medicine. He went upset, he compared with himself with his fellow colleague, fellow PhD student from the faculty of science. He said, why chemistry can graduate so fast? Because they're in the lab. So he also want to watch, he want to compete with them, they want to be faster. So then he gives himself a lot of stress. Rehearsal for PQE for my students, they're always a must. You must rehearse for PQE oral defense. And I know it's hard to write academic English. Even native speaker, they may not know how to write in the beginning. Learn from other papers, how people construct their papers. We always think of the most efficient way to achieve our goal. So for a PhD, your goal is thesis. So from day one, conceptualize how my thesis would appear. What is the first chapter, second chapter, third chapter? Then you work backward. And what is the most efficient way to complete my thesis? Now, as I mentioned, we are maybe all scholarships, straight A students, but you may encounter your first failure or the major failure in doing your PhD. So develop the resilience. Rejection is the law. Okay, for PhD supervisor, again, this is my view, how I supervise PhD. I do avoid micromanagement. I let them have the freedom, but they have to be responsible. So I won't chase them, I won't micromanage them, but they have to, I also ask them, you have to remind me when is the TAC meeting. And you have to be on time for your PQE and oral defense. You have to take responsibility. I do reduce express emotion. Now, this is all from my field psychiatry. Imagine if you stay with someone, to be a family member, who are very critical, very hostile, over-involved, you will be stressed. In psychiatry patient, they have a high chance they have a relapse. So for supervision, you also try to be not so critical. I know it's many students are very critical, but I myself not so critical, not so hostile. I'm not too over-involved in them, because I think they are mature candidates. And I'm very realistic about a PhD. There's a rumor recently in the Faculty of Medicine say that they have to publish a paper with impact factor more than 10 before they can graduate. So some of the first years, they don't understand what is impact factor. Then we are so worried, we clarify that. So it's a rumor, it's not true. So we have to be realistic. We cannot expect our PhD student to, they must publish impact factor more than 10. We also be very careful selection for examiner. Very often, why there is a failure in PQE is not because the PhD thesis is no good, but because there's a mismatch between the examiner expertise and the candidate topics. As a supervisor, we have to ensure the PhD study can be complete with enough time and also with enough resources. And we also be very sensitive to the environment. We know some of them are homesick. Some of them have their family, their young children in the home country and come to Singapore to do PhD. And we value relationship. We try to help them to pass because very often, you know that one of my PhD students, she became professor even earlier than me. So that's why we always value relationship because they are our future collaborators. Okay, this is for the junior academic. So let's say you got your tenure position. So what's the advice? Careful selection for your research topic because it has to be viable for the next 10 years. We have to be flexible. I have many people say they cannot change. PhD, they do these things. They think that they can do the same thing for life. But how can it be? Imagine the handphone you use when you graduate will not be the handphone you use when you become associate professor. So how can it be not changed? The world is changing. Okay, spouse-partner relationship, understand your need. The most challenging thing is your spouse and partner agree to move with you and tolerate the frustration when looking for a job. Now, the other thing about academics is we all talk about can you focus, be focused. But you have to be very careful how to focus. My recommendation is to be broadly focused, but not narrowly focused. Using my example, if I only do interleukin-6 in depression, I say I can only publish at most 10 papers in my career. But my focus is depression, but I do many things in depression, not just interleukin-6. So to avoid tunnel vision and also research dead end. Then people who actually prepare for assistant professor, they have the end product is the dossier. So just like the thesis for PhD, for assistant professor, they will think what appear in the dossier. Now, rejection is very common. I developed a way for emotionless submissions. So for journal, if I know I'm going to submit to Lancet, I have 95% being rejected. So when I submit to Lancet, I already fill up the next journal. So when Lancet, 72 hours, they say you reject me without any peer review. So I don't feel emotional. Immediately, I press the button, submit to next journal. When I in the second journal, I will fill up the third journal. So you won't be depressed. Now, grant, for us in medical faculty, one of the challenges is very hard to get grant is because always be rejected or the grant is killed by a local committee. So you have a very favorable for review, but the local committee will kill the grant. So sometimes very difficult. We cannot, if we apply, it will be rejected. So sometimes we may not want to waste the grant idea. If it just keep rejected in locally, sometimes we work with overseas collaborator. And actually some of my paper actually got rejected in Singapore, but it published at the end. Publication is a mixture. Now I know some of the academic give a lot of stress. I must publish with impact factor more than 10. All my paper must be impact factor more than 10. But again, it may not be realistic because don't devalue the publication in lower impact because we all learn. Actually, there's a quick learning experience, let's say impact factor 3 or 4. Then we improve, the next one is impact factor of 10. The other thing is balance between productivity and perfectionism because we are very perfectionistic. We are very rigid. We may actually yell at people who do not meet our expectations. So we have to balance. The other thing is personal research interest. As I say, some people are very interested in a particular area because of their own experience, but it may not work. Okay? Research is part of life. Today I won't say, please go home at 5 p.m. It's not realistic. For researcher, we must love our work. So for junior researcher, you are here at iHealthtech 11 p.m. or on Saturday, Sunday to do your lab. For more senior academic, also we cannot rest at night because the reviewer invitation will come because your friend in America will send you an invitation to do review, or your paper come back, the Western reviewer, the journal, the editor all reply at night. So actually we must fully enjoy our work. Maybe there are people who want to help you, offer you opportunity, don't reject them. You are always here, there are too many things on my plate, but actually you may reject a possibility or opportunity. Be prepared. People will say that some of our job will change every 5 or 10 years, same for research focus. We learn, we develop expertise, we may change and apply a new technology. Try to be less prideful, have an insight of our own research shortcoming, and then we can always improve. Okay, so lastly is the conclusion. So depression is a common psychiatric condition. It's also common among academics. And depression is not just a psychological mood disorder, it affects our cognitive function and body functions. And today I show you my own research. There are many research say that depression actually has biological and systemic impacts. Okay, I say some academics like me have a lower frontal lobe function because we are lower for creativity, but we are prone to develop emotional problems. And treatment for depressions involve psychological and pharmacological, and there are biological basis for both types of treatment. I think I'll share with you some specific strategy for PhD students, candidates, and junior academics, maybe to improve their mental health and the mental health of the environment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prof. We'll move on to the Q&A session because of time constraint. So we'll take one question from the online, from the audience. Anyone have any question for Prof?
Oh yes, your question.
Is there any kind of infections or disease that can affect our also mind or mental, like now COVID or other disease?
Definitely. Very good questions. COVID definitely cause depression. We actually have a lot of research. Post-COVID can cause depression, fatigue, and also cognitive impairment. But effect may improve for COVID. And yes, all the medical disease, chronic medical disease can cause depression. I share heart disease, diabetes can cause infections. Can cause depression. Infections besides COVID, HIV is well known to cause depression also. We have immunological disorder. One of the immunological disorder I spent 6 years to research is lupus. Lupus actually causes a lot of antibody which damage the brain. It causes depression. So yes, medical condition can cause depression. Yeah. Any question? Other question?
There is one question online actually. So does the FNRS provide incremental validity in detecting MDD among patients compared to psychiatry assessment, which may not have been picked up in clinical interviews or non-functional methods of measuring oxygenated blood hemoglobin?
That's a very good question. It does. But it's very slow in our field to have a more biological assessment, because you will ask why I have a chest pain, I go to the emergency, they will do an ECG or EKG of my heart. But why psychiatry, only talk to me, I have depression or I don't have depression? Because the interview is never accurate, because it depends on what you tell your doctors. If you actually have, the most tricky part is suicidal thoughts. In fact, there's another study using the evidence to detect suicide. Because the people with suicidal, they're really suicidal, they hide. They secretly go and do it. So it definitely has an incremental advantage beside clinical interview questionnaire, and then we have evidence, and then few things add together, it would enhance accuracy of diagnosis.
Prof, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm a strong proponent of exercise, being a non-prescriptive medicine.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how effective is exercise, when it comes to depression. Do
It does.
doctors, recommend exercise as a
In fact,
medicine?
when we try to do evidence in exercise, it's very hard to do because all the hemoglobin level go up. So very hard to measure. So, but there are a lot of evidence exercise can improve depression. In fact, one of the famous studies is actually on one of the marker I mentioned is the BDNF. When people do exercise, it increases the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Again, it promotes neuronal growth. Yeah, so exercise actually works and it improves our mood, improves our physical and mental health.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Okay, we have come to the end of the presentation. Once again, let's thank Paul for the great presentation. Okay, thank you all for attending.